Tonight we drift softly into the starlit skies of ancient America, where the night is wide and patient, and the stars feel close enough to breathe upon. If you enjoy these quiet journeys through forgotten time, you can like and subscribe, and leave a gentle comment telling me where you are listening from and what time it is there right now. Maybe the room is dark. Maybe the world outside is quiet. Maybe the stars are hidden by clouds, but they are still there, moving slowly, just as they always have. Settle in. Let your breathing slow. Let the day loosen its grip as we wander through indigenous observatories and cosmic calendars, shaped not by machines, but by memory, stone, fire, and sky. Tonight is not about urgency. It is not about rushing toward answers. It is about listening. Long before glass telescopes and glowing screens, people across the Americas lifted their eyes to the same heavens we know, and they listened to patterns written in light. The stars whispered directions. The moon traced time. The sun returned again and again to the same places on the horizon, like an old friend keeping promises. In these moments, astronomy was not separate from life. It was woven into planting and harvest, into ceremony and rest, into the stories told to children as embers faded into ash. The sky was not distant. It was intimate. It was a calendar, a teacher, and a companion. As we move gently through this night, imagine the air cooling against bare skin, the smell of earth and smoke, the soft murmur of voices settling into silence. Stones wait patiently, aligned with care. Shadows stretch, then withdraw. Time itself seems to slow, as if the universe understands that tonight is for listening, not for measuring. We begin where desert canyons open their arms to the stars, where ancient builders watched the sun touch stone in moments so precise they still take our breath away, even when we pretend not to be amazed. And so, without hurry, we drift forward, carried by starlight and memory, into the first quiet observatories of ancient America. Under the first stars of the high desert, Chaco Canyon rests like a long-held breath. By day, it is a place of stone and silence, of pale cliffs and dry air. By night, it becomes something else entirely. The sky here feels immense, heavy with stars, layered and deep, as if infinity has weight. 1,000 years ago, the ancestral Pueblo people stood in this same darkness, their eyes adjusted to starlight, their minds tuned to repetition and return. They did not need instruments to tell them that the sun's journey mattered. They could feel it in their bones, in the seasons of maize and beans, in the timing of ceremonies that stitched community together. On a cliff face near Chaco, a spiral pecked into stone waits quietly. It does not announce itself. It simply exists, patient as stone always is. On certain days of the year, when the sun reaches its highest or lowest turning points, a thin blade of light slips between rocks and touches the spiral in just the right way. At summer solstice, light bisects it. At winter solstice, it grazes its edge. This is not accident. It is conversation. Stone and sun speaking in a language that requires stillness to understand. Those who stood here watched the light move slowly, almost imperceptibly, and they remembered. Year after year, the pattern returned, reliable as breath. In this way, time was not counted forward. It's circled. Choco Canyon itself seems arranged with the sky in mind. Great houses, massive stone structures with hundreds of rooms, align along cardinal directions with care that feels almost tender. North, south, east, west. These were not abstract ideas. They were anchors in a moving world. Windows and doorways framed rising and setting bodies of light. The moon, too, was watched closely. Over an 18.6-year cycle, its extremes were tracked, remembered across generations. Imagine the patience this required. Imagine telling a child, and that child telling another, waiting decades to see the moon return to a place it had touched before. They tracked stars better than we track our phones, and they did it without ever needing to charge a battery. The night wind moved through canyon walls, carrying the faint smell of juniper smoke. Voices rose in low chants, not loud, not urgent, but steady. Astronomy here was not about prediction alone. It was about belonging. Knowing when to plant meant survival, but knowing where you stood in the universe meant meaning. The sky was not above them. It was around them, reflected in architecture, ceremony, and story. Even now, as modern visitors stand in the same places, the alignments still hold. The sun still arrives on time. The spiral still waits. Stone remembers what we forget. But as the night deepens, our path moves south and east, where jungles breathe and humidity wraps the air in softness. The Maya world unfolds beneath a sky that feels alive with motion. Here, astronomy became mathematics, and mathematics became ritual. Cities rose with temples stepping upward, each level a quiet echo of the layered heavens above. At Chichen Itza, the great pyramid known as El Castillo stands calm and symmetrical, its stone edges catching moonlight like still water. By day it is impressive. By equinox twilight, it becomes something else entirely. As the sun lowers on those balanced days of spring and autumn, shadows slide along the pyramid's stairway. Slowly, deliberately, the shape of a serpent appears, formed not by carving, but by light itself. It descends, body segment by body segment, until it meets the stone head at the base. Kukulkan returns, not in myth alone, but in shadow and time. This was not spectacle for amusement. It was reassurance. The calendar was holding. The world was still aligned. The Maya watched Venus with particular devotion. Its cycles were recorded in the Dresden Codex, painted pages of careful observation and memory. Venus rose and disappeared, returned as morning star, then evening star, each phase tied to events on Earth. War, ceremony, kingship. Time was not neutral. It was charged. To track Venus was to negotiate with fate itself. Priests climbed temple steps in darkness, their sandals whispering against stone. Eyes lifted toward a planet glowing low on the horizon. Fires burned softly. Copal incense thickened the air with sweetness. Numbers were counted. Days were named. Everything had its place. Ball courts echoed with sound, the heavy thud of rubber striking stone, breath and muscle moving in rhythm. These games were not merely sport. They mirrored cosmic struggle, movement between worlds. The court itself aligned with celestial events, its orientation another quiet nod to the sky. Even play was a calendar. Even motion was a form of counting. Far to the south, where mountains rise, and the air thins. The Inca shaped their empire beneath a sky sharpened by altitude. In Cusco, lines called ceques radiated outward from the heart of the city, connecting sacred sites like threads of light. These were not random paths. They mapped the heavens onto Earth, each line associated with stars, seasons, and rituals. Time moved outward from the center, just as starlight moves across space. At Machu Picchu, stone feels alive with intention. The Intihuatana stone, often called the hitching post of the sun, rises with quiet authority. At certain times of year, it casts almost no shadow at all, the sun standing directly above. The stone does not trap the sun. It simply marks its pause. In these moments, the world feels held in balance. Llamas graze. Wind moves through terraces. The sky presses close, vast and indifferent, yet intimately known. Dawn reveals another alignment as sunlight spills through precisely carved windows, touching interior walls in ways that feel rehearsed. This is architecture as memory. This is stone trained to remember the sky so humans do not have to hold it all alone. High in the Andes, the Milky Way was seen as a river, a reflection of earthly waters. Dark cloud constellations moved through it, animals formed not by stars, but by absence. Llamas, foxes, serpents drifting through blackness. Even darkness had shape. Far across the continent, where rivers widen and earth rises into broad mounds, the Mississippian world watched the sun from Cahokia. Monk's Mound loomed over the floodplain, its terraces catching light in measured ways. Woodhen circles stood nearby, timber posts marking sunrise positions through the year. Each post a note, each dawn a repetition. People gathered in stillness, breath visible in cool air, waiting for the sun to appear exactly where it should. When it did, relief washed through the crowd like warmth itself. These observatories did not require silence, but they invited it. The smell of damp earth, the sound of birds waking, the low murmur of human presence. Time here was communal. No one owned the calendar. Everyone lived inside it. The sky belonged to all, and to none. We wander onward, gently, following the curve of the earth beneath the stars. Poverty Point rises from Louisiana soil, its ridges forming arcs that mirror celestial movement. Built centuries before many famous monuments elsewhere, it speaks quietly of planning and patience. The people who shaped it watched the sky over generations, their hands pressing earth into form while memory guided them. Solstices mattered here too. So did trade routes and gatherings timed to celestial rhythms. The sky coordinated human connection long before clocks claimed the job. Throughout the Americas, from desert to jungle to mountain and plain, the same slow attention unfolds. People watched. They remembered. They passed knowledge not as data, but as story and ceremony. Astronomy was not separate from spirituality. It was its rhythm. When the sun turned back toward warmth, people sang. When the moon vanished, they waited. When stars shifted, they adjusted. There was no panic in change, only respect. Tonight, as we rest inside this long memory, it becomes clear that these observatories were not built to conquer the sky. They were built to listen to it. Stone did not reach upward in defiance. It aligned itself in humility. In doing so, it taught generations how to live within cycles rather than against them. And as the night continues to deepen, as stars drift almost imperceptibly westward, our journey is only beginning. There are more alignments waiting in shadow, more calendars etched into earth and story, more quiet humor in the fact that without satellites or screens, these ancient astronomers understood the heavens with a clarity that still humbles us. For now, let your breathing slow again. Let the images fade gently, like embers dimming at the edge of sight. The sky remains above you, steady and patient, ready to continue its story when you are ready to listen again. The night stretches a little wider now, as if it has decided to stay with us longer. The stars have shifted just enough to notice, though not enough to hurry. Somewhere, far from screens and schedules, the old rhythm continues, steady and unbothered. We drift onward, carried by that same slow attention that once guided hands and eyes across the ancient Americas. Far to the southwest, where desert air cools quickly after sunset, the Hohokam people shaped their world along the curves of both river and sky. The Gila and Salt rivers glimmered faintly under moonlight, reflecting constellations that seemed to swim upon the surface. Canals traced careful lines through the land, engineering wonders in their own right. But above them all, the sky remained the ultimate guide. Seasonal floods, planting times, and ceremonies followed solar movement. Even when stone monuments were few, here, astronomy was quieter, woven into daily survival rather than carved boldly into cliffs. Yet even without towering pyramids, alignment lived in subtle places. Ball courts oriented to cardinal directions, villages positioned to catch sunrise at particular times of year, shells and turquoise offered to fires timed with solstice gatherings. The desert listened, and so did the people. Coyotes called, owls watched, the stars burned white and sharp in air, so dry it felt endless. No one needed to announce what the sky was doing. Everyone already knew. As we continue eastward, forests grow thicker, the ground softer beneath careful feet. In the Ohio River Valley, the Hopewell culture shaped Earth into precise geometry. Circles, squares, octagons. Shapes that seem simple until you realize how carefully they relate to one another. And to the horizon, the great serpent mound coils across a ridge, its head aligned with the summer solstice sunset. As the sun lowers, it slips directly into the serpent's open mouth, a quiet offering of light. No stone here, just earth and intention. The serpent itself feels ancient beyond measure, a being of sky and ground, moving between worlds. Its coils echo celestial curves, the looping paths of planets across the heavens. Standing there as dusk deepens, the air filled with insects and leaf scent, it is easy to imagine a crowd gathered silently, watching the sun disappear exactly where it should. No applause, just understanding. But as the night deepens further, we turn our attention south once more, toward the dense forests and highlands of Mesoamerica, where the Maya were not alone in watching the heavens. The Zapotec city of Monte Alban rises above the Oaxaca Valley, its flattened mountaintop holding plazas and temples aligned with care. One building in particular, often called Building J, points not north or south, but at a strange angle, Its orientation matches the rising of certain stars and possibly Venus, marking events that mattered deeply to those who counted days with such precision. Here, carved stones known as donzontes depict figures once thought to be dancers, but now understood as captives or sacrifices, reminders that timekeeping and power often walked together. Astronomy could bless crops, but it could also legitimize rulers. When the sky spoke, those who claimed to understand it gained authority. Still, beneath the politics, the stars remained indifferent, tracing their paths regardless of human ambition. Further north, in what is now New Mexico, the pueblo of Chimney Rock rises like a whisper against the horizon. Twin stone pillars frame the moon during its major lunar standstill, an event that returns only once every 18.6 years. Imagine the patience required to mark this. Elders pointing out the place on the horizon, children listening, half believing, growing into adults who finally witness the moon rise between stone fingers just as promised. The satisfaction of that moment must have felt deep and quiet, like a truth finally confirmed. Night air here smells of pine and cold stone. Fires crackle softly. The moon climbs, brilliant and steady, casting pale light across faces turned upward. No one checks the time. The time is happening. As we move into the Great Plains, the sky opens wide, unbroken by mountains or trees. Here, stars feel closer, larger, almost within reach. Plains cultures watched celestial movement with a different intimacy, reading the sky as one reads a familiar face. Tippy rings on the ground reflect circular patterns seen above. Certain stars marked seasonal bison movements. When to hunt, when to rest, when to gather. The Pawnee, in particular, held deep astronomical knowledge. Their earth lodges mirrored the cosmos, with entrances aligned to rising stars and the Milky Way seen as a path of souls. Stories flowed easily between sky and ground. Creation itself was told through celestial motion. The sky was not decoration, it was instruction. Southward again, the Olmec heartland hums softly beneath heavy air. Often called the mother culture of Mesoamerica, the Olmec left fewer written records, but their monuments speak through alignment and repetition. Colossal heads gaze outward, perhaps oriented toward ritual pathways linked to solar movement. Larventer's layout suggests careful attention to cardinal directions and celestial order. Even in mystery, the sky leaves its trace. The rhythm continues in Teotihuacan, the vast city where the pyramid of the sun rises like a sleeping giant. Its orientation is slightly off true north, matching the setting of the Pleiades and other significant celestial events. Walking its avenue of the dead at night, one can almost feel the echo of thousands of feet, moving in unison during ceremonies timed to cosmic cycles. The city itself was a calendar, lived in rather than consulted. The Pleiades mattered across cultures, their disappearance and return marking agricultural cycles. When they vanished into the sun's glare, it was a pause. When they returned, it was reassurance. In some regions, their return meant the world would continue another year. Anxiety softened into relief as tiny points of light emerged once more from dawn's edge. In the far south, beyond mountains and deserts, the Mapuche of southern Chile watched the sky through rain and cloud, tracking solstices and lunar cycles despite less predictable weather. Their ceremonies aligned with seasonal shifts, their stories embedding celestial movement into moral lessons and memory. Even where stars hid often, they were never forgotten. As this second part of our journey settles, it becomes clear that astronomy across the Americas was not uniform, but it was unified by patience. No culture rushed the sky. No one demanded answers faster than the universe was willing to offer them. Observations stretched across lifetimes. Knowledge was communal. Humor even found its place, quiet and gentle. After all, when you wait nearly 19 years to confirm a lunar alignment, you learn not to take yourself too seriously. The stars continue their slow drift above us now, just as they did then. Somewhere, a solstice marker waits. Somewhere, a shadow prepares to fall along a carved edge. Somewhere, a story is being told again, softly, so it will not be forgotten. Let your breathing remain slow. Let the images blur gently at the edges. The night is still deep, and there is more sky ahead of us yet. The night has grown very quiet now. Even the smallest sounds seem far away. Softened by distance and darkness, the stars continue their slow procession. Indifferent to urgency, generous with time, we drift onward, deeper into this shared sky, where memory stretches farther than names. In the desert lands of what is now California, the Chumash people watched the heavens from coastal hills and inland valleys. The ocean breathed nearby, its steady rhythm mirroring the slow certainty of celestial cycles. Here, the sun and moon guided fishing seasons, plant gathering, and ceremonial life. Solstice points were marked not always by stone, but by story and repeated observation. When the sun reached its farthest place on the horizon, it was noticed. When it returned, it was welcomed. Knowledge lived in memory, carried gently from one generation to the next, like a well-loved song. Chumash rock art shows celestial symbolism layered into everyday scenes. Painted suns, crescents, and star-like forms appear among animals and human figures. These were not decorations. They were reminders. The sky was present even in daylight. Even when clouds rolled in from the sea, at night, fires burned low, reflecting in calm eyes turned upward. The Milky Way arched overhead, pale and wide, its meaning understood without needing to be spoken aloud. As we move inland again, the land rises into plateaus where the Hopi villages cling to mesas like quiet watchers. The Hopi calendar is ceremonial and precise, guided by solar movement and star positions. Certain kivas, sacred underground chambers, align with sunrise on solstice mornings. A beam of light enters, touching a specific place, confirming that the world remains in balance. Outside, cold air fills lungs. Inside, prayers are whispered. The sky has spoken again. For the Hopi, Katsanom, spiritual beings, travel between worlds. Their movements linked to seasonal change. The stars are not distant objects. They are relations. Their appearance and disappearance signal transitions not just in weather, but in responsibility. Time is moral as well as physical. To miss a ceremony is not just to lose a date, but to disrupt harmony. Farther east, in the Appalachian region, earthworks and stone arrangements quietly echo celestial awareness. Some align with equinox sunrise, others with lunar extremes. These places often sit on ridges, where wind moves freely and the horizon opens wide. Standing there at dawn, one can feel how easy it would be to notice patterns. The sun rises slightly north or south each day, never rushing, always returning. Over years, these changes become familiar, almost comforting. In Florida, the Calusa people built shell mounds and canals along the coast, their lives shaped by tides as much as by stars. Lunar cycles mattered deeply here. Fishing and shellfish gathering followed moon phases, and ceremonies aligned with both sky and sea. The moon's pull was visible in water levels, a constant reminder that the heavens reach down and touch the earth in quiet ways. As the night continues, our journey drifts south again, toward the highlands of Guatemala, where lesser-known Maya sites hide among hills and forests. Places like Uaxactán preserve alignments so precise they still draw archaeologists into quiet awe from a viewing platform. Temples line up with sunrise on solstice and equinox days. The sun rises directly over specific structures, marking time with light and stone. No inscription needed. The alignment itself speaks, standing there in the early morning, mist clinging to leaves. One can imagine priests and community members gathering silently, breath visible, waiting for the first edge of light. When it appears exactly where expected, there is no surprise, only confirmation. The calendar holds, the world continues. But astronomy was not only about the sun. The Maya followed Jupiter, Mars, and especially Venus, weaving their cycles into long counts and ritual timing. The sky was complex, layered, alive with motion, yet the tone remained calm. Observation was not frantic. It was steady, practiced, and shared. In the far south of the Andes, among the Aymara, Lake Titicaca reflected stars so clearly they seemed doubled. The lake itself was sacred, a mirror between worlds. Islands within it held ceremonial sites aligned with solar events. The sun's reflection at dawn and dusk created moments of symmetry, sky and water briefly indistinguishable. Here, creation stories placed the origin of the sun itself within the lake. Astronomy and myth blended seamlessly. Even further south, in Patagonia, the Selknam people tracked seasonal changes through stars and sky color rather than monumental architecture. Long nights and shifting weather demanded careful attention. Certain stars marked the return of animals. Others signaled cold or warmth. Stories encoded this knowledge, making it easier to remember, easier to pass on. The sky became narrative, and narrative became survival. Across all these places, one truth settles gently into awareness. Indigenous astronomy in the Americas was not about domination of nature. It was about relationship. The sky was not something to be solved. It was something to live with, to listen to trust. There is something deeply restful in this approach. No alarms, no deadlines, just cycles unfolding as they always have. When the sun turns back toward warmth, it does so without being hushed. When stars return to familiar places, they do so without announcement. The universe keeps its own schedule, and it is remarkably reliable. As this part of our journey softens toward its close, let the images fade slowly. The mesas darken, the forests hush, the water stills beneath reflected stars. You are not required to hold onto every detail. Let them drift past like constellations seen from a moving place. The sky remains above you now, just as it did for all those who watched before. .com.vast.patient. The night feels heavier now, as if it has settled fully around us. Sounds are softer. Thoughts move more slowly. Above, the sky continues its ancient work, turning without effort, carrying stories that do not rush to be heard. We drift onward, unhurried, letting the stars guide us once more. Deep in the rainforests of the Yucatan, beyond the well-known stone cities, smaller ceremonial centers waited quietly beneath layers of leaves and time. These places did not seek grandeur. They sought accuracy. Low platforms, simple shrines, and open courtyards were aligned with sunrises that pierced the jungle canopy on specific mornings of the year. Light filtered through leaves, insects hummed, and suddenly the sun arrived exactly where it was meant to be. Even here, where the forest tried constantly to reclaim stone, the sky remained legible. The Maya-long count calendar stretched time far beyond a single lifetime. It reached backward into mythic creation and forward into futures no one alive would see. To count like this required trust. Trust that the world would continue. Trust that memory would survive. Priests sat with bark paper codices, painting glyphs by firelight, recording eclipses, solstices, and planetary cycles. The scratch of brush on page blended with night sounds. Time became visible, not loud, not demanding, simply present. Eclipses, especially, carried weight. When the moon darkened or the sun dimmed, it was not chaos, but warning. The Dresden Codex lists these moments with care, allowing future generations to know when the sky would briefly withdraw its light. Imagine the calm authority this knowledge carried, while others feared the sudden dark. Those who understood the calendar waited, knowing the light would return. There is quiet power in that kind of patience. But as the night shifts, we turn again toward the north, where stone circles and alignments dot landscapes often overlooked. In present-day Minnesota, the Jeffers petroglyphs spread across exposed rock, carvings worn smooth by centuries of weather. Among animals and human figures, symbols appear that echo solar imagery, circles, lines, motions frozen in stone. The site aligns with sunrise during solstice, shadows stretching across carvings that have waited thousands of years to be touched by light in. Just that way, the people who carved these images lived close to the land, their lives shaped by bison herds and changing seasons. The sky was their clock. When certain stars appeared at dusk, it was time to move. When they vanished, it was time to return. Nothing was wasted, not even attention. Every glance upward mattered. Farther west, in the rugged terrain of the Great Basin, the Fremont people left behind rock art that speaks softly of celestial awareness. Spirals, grids, and figures carved or painted on cliff faces catch sunlight and shadow at particular times of year. Some designs glow briefly when struck by angled light, then fade back into stone. These moments are fleeting. Miss them, and you wait another year or another lifetime. This teaches a different relationship with time. Not everything is meant to be constantly accessible. Some knowledge requires waiting. Some beauty exists only for a moment, then retreats. The Fremont seemed comfortable with this. Their art does not shout, it whispers, and only to those who arrive at the right time. As we move south again, the ancient city of Pacoima, also known as Cauces Grandes, emerges from the desert of northern Mexico. Multi-story adobe structures rise in gentle curves, their doorways and windows aligned with solar movement. Macaws once lived here, their bright feathers echoing the colors of dawn and dusk. Ritual spaces followed astronomical cues, blending Mesoamerican and northern traditions. The sky connected cultures across vast distances, its pattern shared even when languages differed. Night winds moved through adobe walls, carrying the faint smell of smoke and earth. Somewhere, a drumbeat marked a ceremony timed to a celestial event. Somewhere else, a child learned which star meant winter was loosening its grip. Knowledge moved quietly, without hurry. In the far north, beneath skies where auroras sometimes danced, indigenous peoples watched not only stars, but light itself shift and shimmer. While auroras were not predictable in the same way as solstices, they became part of the sky's personality, woven into stories and meaning. Even here, where darkness could last long and cold pressed close, the heavens offered guidance and reassurance. Across the continent, one pattern becomes clear. Ancient American astronomy was not obsessed with precision for its own sake. Precision served harmony. Calendars existed to align human life with something larger, to plant at the right time, to gather together, to remember that existence moved in cycles, not straight lines. There is quiet humor in this realization. While modern life often feels obsessed with speed and control, these ancient systems remind us that waiting was once considered wisdom. They waited for shadows to fall. They waited for stars to return. They waited years, decades, sometimes generations, trusting that the sky would keep its promises. And it always did. As this part of our journey begins to soften at the edges, let the images slow further. The forest dims. The desert cools. The mountains hold their breath beneath stars that seem eternal. You do not need to remember every name or place. You only need to feel the rhythm. The same rhythm that once guided hands shaping stone, eyes lifted in patience, and stories told beside fading fires. The sky above you tonight is not different from theirs. It has changed only slightly, drifting slowly over thousands of years. It still moves with care. It still invites attention, and it still waits. The night feels endless in the best possible way now, as though time itself has decided to rest beside us. The stars glide without effort, and the silence between thoughts grows wider. We move forward again, gently, following the same slow curiosity that once guided countless eyes. Upward, in the deserts of Baja California, ancient rock paintings rest beneath open skies. Red and black figures stretch across stone shelters, many placed where sunlight enters only at particular angles. On certain days of the year, light touches painted symbols briefly, then withdraws. These moments are subtle, easy to miss, yet deeply intentional. The people who made them understood that not all knowledge needs to be permanent. Some things are meant to appear, then disappear, leaving only memory behind, far inland, where the sonoran desert breathes heat even after sunset. The Tohono O'odham watched the heliacal rising of specific stars to mark the beginning of rains. The return of moisture mattered deeply here. When certain stars appeared just before dawn, it was a sign that the desert would soon soften. Seeds were prepared, songs were sung. The sky did not promise comfort, but it offered warning and hope in equal measure. Night insects filled the air with rhythm. Fires burned low. Elders spoke quietly of patterns that had never failed them. The stars above shimmered faintly through dry air, steady and indifferent to human worry, yet generous enough to offer guidance to those who paid attention. As we drift east again, the land folds into valleys where rivers curve like constellations laid upon the ground. In the Mississippi Delta, mound centers rose not just as political hubs, but as timekeepers. Their placement often echoed solar movement, with causeways aligned to sunrise or sunset on important days. Walking these paths during ceremonies, people quite literally walked through time, their footsteps matching the rhythm of the heavens. The smell of river water mixed with smoke and DAMP earth. Drums echoed softly across flat land. When the sun reached its turning point, shadows stretched long and thin, touching places worn smooth by countless feet. In these moments, astronomy was not observed from afar. It was experienced bodily, through movement and gathering. To the northeast, among the Haudenosaunee, the moon guided ceremonial cycles tied to agriculture and community renewal. Each moon carried a name, reflecting changes in environment and responsibility. Time here was not abstract. It was descriptive. The strawberry moon, the corn planting moon. Each phase invited a specific kind of attention. Looking up was also a way of looking around, noticing what the land was doing in response. Stories told beneath longhouse roofs linked stars to ancestors, reminding listeners that the sky was a continuation of the community, not a separate realm. When someone passed, their spirit joined the celestial patterns already familiar. Loss softened into continuity. The night sky became a place of return rather than absence. In the arid lands of Peru's coast, the Nazca lines stretch across the desert floor, visible fully only from above, yet meaningful from the ground. Some align with solstice sunrises, others with star risings. Giant figures of animals trace paths across the plain, their forms echoing constellations overhead. Walking these lines during rituals connected earth and sky through deliberate motion. Feet followed patterns laid out long before, turning bodies into instruments of timekeeping. The lines do not demand explanation. They exist, patient, waiting for those willing to walk slowly enough to feel their purpose. High in the Andes again, the Quechua people watched the dark spaces between stars as closely as the stars themselves. These dark cloud constellations moved through the Milky Way, marking seasonal change. When certain shapes appeared, it signaled planting or harvest. Absence became information. Darkness became guide. It is a reminder that knowledge does not always come from what is brightest. As this understanding settles, there is a quiet smile hidden within it. Modern eyes often overlook darkness, rushing toward light and clarity. Ancient eyes understood that shadows have shape, and silence has meaning. They did not rush the sky. They let it reveal itself in layers. Across all these cultures, astronomy did not isolate individuals. It gathered them. Watching the sky was rarely a solitary act. It was shared. Families stood together. Communities waited together. When the sun rose in the right place, everyone saw it. When the moon reached fullness, everyone felt it. Time belonged to the group, not the individual. Now, as Part 5 begins to ease toward stillness, let your awareness soften further. You do not need to follow every star. Let them drift. Let the desert cool. Let rivers flow quietly through darkness. The same sky that guided canals, mounds, temples, and stories still arches above you now. It moves slowly. It asks nothing. And it remains endlessly patient. The night has become almost weightless now. Thoughts drift like thin clouds, barely forming before dissolving again. The sky continues its long, careful turning, unconcerned with where one story ends and another begins. We follow it gently, without effort, letting the darkness carry us onward. Along the northern coasts, where forests meet cold water, the Tlingit and Haida peoples watched the sky reflected in black waves. Here, stars shimmered and broke apart on the ocean's surface, their patterns constantly shifting. Even so, the movement of the sun and moon remained reliable. Winter nights stretched long, offering ample time for observation. Summer days lingered, light refusing to leave. These extremes made celestial awareness unavoidable. Totem poles carved with animals and ancestral figures sometimes reflected star stories, encoding seasonal knowledge in visual form. Raven, often associated with creation and light, carried celestial meaning. When certain stars appeared, it marked transitions in weather and resource availability. The sky was not distant. It was present in stories told beside driftwood fires, smoke curling upward to join the stars above. As we drift southward again, the land opens into the valleys of central Mexico, where time itself seems layered. At Tula, the Toltec city, massive warrior columns stand beneath the same sky that once guided their builders. Though the Toltecs left fewer clear astronomical monuments than the Maya, their city's orientation still reflects solar awareness. Even when details fade, alignment remains. Stone remembers what names forget. The Toltecs inherited knowledge, just as they passed it on. Astronomy was cumulative. Each culture added its own attention to what had already been observed. Nothing began from nothing. The sky had been watched long before pyramids rose, and it continued long after cities fell. Further south, in the jungles of Honduras, Copan's stelae rise like quiet sentinels. Their carved faces stare outward, their backs recording dates tied to celestial cycles. Shadows play across these stones at certain times of year, emphasizing glyphs that mark solstices and equinoxes. These monuments were calendars you could walk round, touch, and feel warming beneath the sun. The air here is thick with life. Insects hum, leaves drip moisture. Stone absorbs heat during the day and releases it slowly at night. Standing among these stelae after sunset, one can almost feel the passage of time as a physical thing, pressing gently but persistently forward. As the night deepens further, we cross the equator, where seasons reverse their rhythm. Here, ancient Andean cultures, like the Moqui and later the Wari, aligned ceremonial centers with solar events that marked agricultural cycles unique to this latitude. The sun's path here is different, yet still predictable. Observation adapted, knowledge shifted. The sky was always the same teacher, but lessons varied by place. Ceramic vessels painted with stars and animals carried astronomical symbolism into everyday life. Drinking, eating, gathering, all happened beneath reminders of cosmic order. Nothing was separate. Even rest was timed to lunar cycles, bodies responding naturally to light and darkness. Far inland, in the Amazon basin, dense canopy hid much of the sky, yet indigenous peoples still tracked celestial movement through small openings, river reflections, and seasonal change. The rising of certain stars corresponded with flooding, fish migration, and fruiting trees. When the river swelled, it was not surprise. The sky had already spoken. In these environments, astronomy relied heavily on memory and oral tradition. Stories functioned as calendars, embedding precise timing into narrative form. A myth might seem symbolic on the surface, but beneath it lay practical instruction. When a particular story was retold, it was time to act. As this understanding settles in, there is a quiet sense of respect. Knowledge here did not require permanence of material. It survived through people, through repetition, through care. The sky did not need to be conquered or archived. It needed to be remembered. Now, as part 6 begins to soften, allow your breathing to slow even more. Let the images blur gently, like stars seen through half-closed eyes. Totem poles fade into silhouettes. Jungle stones cool beneath moonlight. Rivers continue their unseen flow. The sky above you remains unchanged in its patience. It has time, and for now, so do you. The night has reached that deep, quiet middle where everything feels suspended. The world seems to be holding its breath, and the sky, wide and familiar, keeps turning with the same gentle certainty. We drift onward, carried by the slow pulse of stars that have never learned to hurry. In the vast lands of the Canadian plains, the Blackfoot and neighboring nations read the sky as a living archive. Tippy circles mirrored the dome above, each lodge an echo of a star's place. The Big Dipper, known as the Seven Brothers, traced a story of pursuit and transformation as it circled the northern sky. Its movement marked the passage of seasons, not with numbers, but with narrative. When the constellation reached certain positions at dusk, people knew what work awaited them. When it dipped low, they knew rest was near. Winter nights here were long and clear. The cold sharpened the stars, making them feel closer, brighter, more insistent. Fires crackled softly, and stories stretched with the darkness, filling hours that modern clocks would find unbearable. In those stories, the sky was never background. It was always a character, steady and watchful. As we move westward again, the Columbia Plateau opens beneath a sky shaped by wind and water. The Yakama and other plateau peoples watched celestial patterns reflected in river behavior and salmon runs. When certain stars appeared just before dawn, it was time to prepare for fishing. The return of salmon was written first in the sky, then in the water. Night after night, eyes lifted upward, checking that the ancient agreement still held. Petroglyphs carved along riverbanks show spirals and shapes that catch light differently throughout the year. At solstice, shadows fall in familiar ways, touching stone marks left by hands long gone. These places do not announce themselves loudly. They reward patience. Stand long enough, return often enough, and the pattern reveals itself. Far to the south, in the lowlands of Bolivia, the Tiwanaku civilization aligned monumental stone gateways with solar events of startling precision. The gateway of the sun frames the rising sun during solstice, light pouring through as if invited. Carved figures on the stone surface seem to witness this moment endlessly, their expressions frozen in calm attention. Here, stone and sky meet in perfect agreement, year after year. The plaza fills with pale light. Shadows retreat. The cold air warms slightly. This is not spectacle. It is confirmation. The sun has returned to its place, just as it promised. Agriculture, ceremony, and social order rest upon this quiet reliability. As the night continues, our path leads us to the Caribbean, where island cultures watched stars rise and set over open water. Navigation depended on celestial memory. Certain stars marked directions, others seasons. The horizon was clear and unforgiving. Mistakes were costly. Attention was survival. Here, astronomy was learned early. Children listened as elders pointed out stars, their names and movements woven into songs easy to remember. The sea reflected moonlight in broken patterns, and the sky above felt endless. In this environment, knowing the heavens meant knowing how to return home. Across all these places, there is a shared sense of humility. No one believed they controlled the sky. They adapted to it. They listened. They adjusted. The universe did not revolve around them, and that was comforting. There was relief in knowing something larger kept time. There is also gentle irony here. Without metal instruments, without lenses or screens, these cultures tracked movements so subtle that modern observers sometimes rediscover them. Only after careful study, a solstice alignment overlooked for centuries suddenly reveals itself, and we stand surprised. While stone remains unimpressed, it has been waiting. As Part 7 begins to drift towards stillness, let your thoughts slow further. The plains fade into darkness. Rivers quiet beneath starlight. Stone gateways cool as night deepens. You do not need to remember where we have been. The sky remembers for you. Above you now, the same stars continue their ancient paths. They do not rush. They do not pause. They simply move, and in their movement, they offer rest. The night has become very soft now, like fabric worn smooth by time. Thoughts arrive slowly, if at all, and the sky above seems closer, as though it has leaned in to listen. We move onward again, without effort, carried by the same quiet curiosity that once guided entire worlds. In the high deserts of Nevada and Utah, the Shoshone and Ute peoples lived beneath skies so clear they felt endless. Here, stars were sharp points of light, unmuddied by moisture or cloud. The Milky Way stretched overhead like a pale road, and its position shifted through the seasons, offering guidance without words. Certain stars rising just before dawn signaled the time to gather seeds. Others marked when winter would soon loosen its hold. Observation was constant, but never strained. It was simply part of being awake. Rock alignments in these lands are modest, often little more than carefully placed stones on ridges or open flats. Yet at solstice, the sun rises or sets exactly where it should, slipping between stones like a remembered promise. These places do not seek attention. They exist quietly, waiting for light and shadow to perform their brief, perfect meeting. As we drift south again, the deserts deepen into the lands once held by the Mogollon culture. Their pueblos and cliff dwellings faced directions chosen with care. Sunrise warmed living spaces at specific times of year. Winter light reached deeper into rooms. Summer sun stayed outside. Architecture itself became a solar instrument, shaping comfort and survival through careful alignment. Living within the calendar meant living well. Night in these cliff dwellings was calm. Wind moved through canyons. Stars appeared one by one. Families gathered close, stories rising gently into darkness. Children learned which stars mattered not through lectures, but through repetition. They looked up because everyone else did. Knowledge flowed without pressure. Farther south, in the cloud forests of Costa Rica, pre-Columbian stone spheres sit in quiet clearings. Their purpose is still debated, but their placement often aligns with celestial and landscape features. Perfectly shaped, they reflect sunlight differently throughout the day, and perhaps marked important times through shadow and light. Even without certainty, the intention is clear. These were not random creations. They belonged to a worldview where precision mattered, even when meaning remained layered. As the night deepens, we turn again to the Andes, where the Inca were not alone in mapping the sky. Earlier cultures like the Chavan integrated astronomy into temple design, creating underground passages where sound and light interacted with celestial timing. Echoes moved through stone corridors during ceremonies aligned with seasonal change. The sky did not only appear above. It resonated through architecture, through sound, through feeling. High altitude sharpened awareness. The stars felt close, intense, almost overwhelming. Yet there was no fear, only familiarity. The sky was a neighbor that visited every night without fail. In the far north again, beneath circumpolar stars that never set, Inuit peoples observed patterns of light and darkness that defined survival. Here, the sun's disappearance and return were monumental events. The stars that remained visible throughout long winters became anchors of orientation and time. Even when the world was dark for months, the sky offered structure. Polaris held steady. Constellations circled patiently. Stories helped pass long hours. They encoded navigation, seasonal change, and moral guidance. Looking up was not escape. It was grounding. The sky provided stability when everything else felt uncertain. Across the entire hemisphere, one truth continues to surface, gentle and insistent. Indigenous astronomy was not about prediction alone. It was about reassurance, the knowledge that the sun would return, that stars would reappear, that cycles would continue even when individual lives ended. This understanding softened fear and anchored communities in something larger than themselves. There is a quiet comfort in realizing that for thousands of years, people fell asleep beneath the same stars you see now. They trusted those lights. They shaped their lives around them. They rested knowing the universe was consistent, even when life was not. As Part 8 begins to ease toward rest, allow your awareness to drift even further. The desert cools, the mountains darken, the oceans breathe steadily beneath moonlight. You are not required to stay awake for the stars to keep moving. They will continue whether you watch or not. Above you, the sky remains vast, calm, and endlessly patient. The night feels very deep now, as though it has forgotten the idea of morning altogether. Everything rests inside a long, gentle pause. The stars move, but so slowly they seem still, and we move with them, drifting further into this quiet memory of sky and stone. In the forests of the eastern woodlands, where trees form dark silhouettes against a lighter horizon, indigenous communities learned to read subtle changes in the heavens. The Cherokee watched the Pleiades closely, their rising and setting tied to agricultural cycles and ceremonial life. When these small stars appeared in the evening sky, it was time to prepare for cold. When they vanished, it was time to rest the land. The constellation was sometimes called the Seven Boys, a story of escape and transformation, reminding listeners that the sky was alive with narrative. Night here carried the smell of leaves and damp earth. Crickets sang steadily, fires burned low. Elders pointed upward, their hands steady, their voices calm. The stars did not need to be named every night. Their positions were enough. Everyone knew where to look. Farther south, among the Cano, ceremonial centers aligned with cardinal directions and solar movement structured community life. Mounds rose gently from the land, not towering, but intentional. Pathways between them followed orientations that mirrored celestial order. Walking these paths during ceremonies meant walking within time itself, each step part of a rhythm older than memory. As the night stretches on, we find ourselves once more among the Maya, but this time away from cities, in open fields and small villages. Farmers watched the horizon at dawn, noting where the sun rose against distant hills. They did not need pyramids to tell them when to plant. The land itself became the instrument. Shadows lengthened and shortened. Light shifted subtly. Over years, these changes became as familiar as breathing. Children learned by watching adults watch the sky. There was no moment when astronomy began. It simply existed, present in daily life. When rain came too early or too late, the sky was consulted again. Stories adjusted, expectations softened. The calendar was not rigid. It was responsive. In the far west, where the Sierra Nevada rises sharply, Paiute communities watched stars disappear behind peaks at predictable times of year. Mountains became markers, their silhouettes framing celestial movement. When certain stars dipped behind familiar ridges at dusk, it signaled seasonal change. The land and sky worked together, offering layered information to those who paid attention. Snow reflected starlight softly. Breath formed small clouds in cold air. Even in stillness, time moved forward, marked by stars sliding slowly along mountain edges. As we drift south into the heart of South America again, the Guarani tracked the movement of the Southern Cross, its rotation through the night marking the passage of hours. When the cross stood upright, it was a specific time. When it tilted, another. The sky became a clock without hands, its face immense and exact. In these traditions, astronomy was never isolated from ethics. Knowing the sky meant knowing when to act with restraint, when to celebrate, when to mourn. Time carried responsibility. To ignore the sky was not ignorance, but imbalance. Across thousands of years and countless cultures, this shared attentiveness created landscapes shaped by light and shadow, by rising and setting, by waiting and remembering. Some alignments remain obvious. Others reveal themselves only when the light is just right, on a single morning every year, or every generation. There is something deeply calming in knowing that much of this knowledge still waits quietly in the land, undisturbed. A stone alignment forgotten by history books still meets the sun on solstice. A petroglyph still catches light at the exact moment it was meant to. The sky keeps its appointments, whether or not anyone arrives. As Part 9 begins to soften, allow yourself to sink deeper into stillness. The forests darken, the mountains fade, the stars continue their slow dance. Indifferent to being watched, generous enough to be seen. You do not need to stay awake to honor them. They have been doing this for a very long time. The night feels settled now, like a deep lake with no ripples left on its surface. Thoughts drift slowly, if they drift at all, and the sky above continues its patient turning, unchanged by how close, lie or loosely it is observed. We move onward again, quietly, as if not to disturb the calm that has gathered around us. In the wide open lands of northern Mexico and the American Southwest, the Raramuri, also known as the Tarahumara, lived among canyons and high plateaus where the sky felt immense and close at the same time. Their understanding of celestial cycles was woven into movement itself, long distance running, an essential part of their culture, often followed paths aligned with landscape and sky. Endurance mirrored cosmic rhythm. There was no rush, only steady motion, breath after breath, step after step, much like the stars circling overhead. Their ceremonies followed solar and lunar cycles, marked not by monumental stone, but by gathering and song. When the moon grew full, it was noticed. When it waned, work shifted. Time was not something to be measured aggressively. It was something to move with. As we drift farther east, the sky arches over the Ozark Plateau, where ancient stone arrangements and mound sites quietly mark celestial events. These places are easy to overlook, softened by forest and time. Yet at solstice dawn, sunlight still slips through gaps in stone, touching specific points on the ground. These moments remain private, almost shy. They do not announce themselves. They reward those who wait. The air here carries the scent of pine and soil. Birds stir as morning approaches, though night still holds. The sun's return is never hurried. It rises exactly when it intends to, just as it always has, in the deserts of northern Chile, beneath some of the clearest skies on Earth. Ancient peoples watched stars with a clarity that feels almost overwhelming, long before modern observatories arrived. These skies were already known intimately. Rock shelters and ceremonial sites align with sunrise and star risings, marking time in a land where water was scarce and seasons mattered deeply. The sky offered warning before drought, reassurance before planting, and meaning beyond survival. Here, The stars feel close enough to touch. The Milky Way spills across the sky like pale smoke. Silence presses in gently, broken only by wind over stone. In this stillness, the movement of the heavens becomes impossible to ignore. As the night continues, we return once more to the idea of calendars, not as objects, but as lived experiences. Across the Americas, time was not something kept on walls or carried in pockets. It was walked, sung, planted, harvested, and remembered. Solstices were not dates. They were sensations. The angle of light, the warmth on skin, the length of a shadow at noon. There is quiet humor here too, gentle and unspoken. Without alarms, without reminders, without glowing screens. People knew exactly when the year turned. They noticed because they were paying attention. They noticed because their lives required it. The sky did not compete with anything else for their gaze. In the Amazon once more, where clouds often hide stars, people learned to read other signs tied to celestial change. Insect sounds shifted with seasons. River levels responded to distant rains predicted by star movement unseen, but remembered. Even when the sky was invisible, its influence remained. This teaches something simple and calming. Knowledge does not always require constant visibility. Sometimes it rests in trust, built over generations of careful observation. The sky did not need to be watched every night to be known. It needed to be respected. As this part of our journey begins to fade, let your awareness soften even further. The deserts cool, the forests hush, the mountains hold their quiet shapes beneath the stars. You are not expected to follow every cycle, every alignment. You are allowed to rest. The same sky that guided canals, mounds, temples, and stories continues its slow movement above you now. It does not ask for effort. It simply exists, steady and reliable, offering the same calm it always has. The night feels very old now, as though it has been here far longer than memory, and will remain long after sleep has arrived. The sky continues its slow, careful motion, each star following a path worn smooth by repetition. We drift onward again, quietly, letting the darkness do most of the work for us. In the broad basin lands of the interior West, where horizons stretch wide and unobstructed, the Goshute and other Great Basin peoples learned to notice the smallest changes in light. Here, the sun's position at dawn and dusk mattered deeply. A slight shift north or south meant something had changed, even if the land itself looked the same. Winter crept in softly. Spring arrived without announcement. The sky was the only reliable messenger. Stone cairns placed on ridges marked these shifts. Simple piles, easily overlooked, yet positioned with care. At solstice, the sun rose or set exactly over a distant peak, framed by stone. The moment passed quickly. If you were not watching, it was gone. This taught attentiveness without anxiety. There would always be another year. As we move east again, the night sky arches above the prairies, where the Lakota read meaning in both stars and space between them. The Black Hills were sacred not only for what they held on Earth, but for how they connected to the sky. Certain stars rose above specific peaks, linking land and heavens in a quiet conversation. Vision quests and ceremonies followed celestial timing, grounding spiritual experience in cosmic order. The Milky Way was seen as a path of souls, a reminder that life moved onward even after the body rested. Looking up softened fear. Death was not disappearance, but movement, a slow journey along a familiar road of light. Farther south, the sky above the Sonoran Desert deepens into a dark so clear it feels endless. The Yaqui people watched the movement of the sun and moon as part of a ceremonial calendar that structured the entire year. Rituals unfolded in sequence, each one arriving at its proper time, guided by celestial cues. There was comfort in knowing what came next, not because it was written down, but because it had always happened this way. Night air cooled, skin warmed by day. Drums sounded softly. Feet moved in patterns learned long ago. Above it all, the stars watched without judgment, offering only consistency. As the night continues, we return once more to the idea of memory. Many ancient observatories across the Americas were not meant to last forever. Wood rotted, earth eroded, stories shifted. Yet the knowledge survived because it was lived. Each generation relearned the sky by watching it themselves. No one relied entirely on the past. The present sky was always enough. This is perhaps the most calming realization of all. You do not need perfect records. You do not need total certainty. You only need attention and time. The sky will meet you halfway. There is gentle humor in this, too. While modern observers often marvel at ancient precision, those who built these systems likely found it ordinary. Of course the sun rises there. Of course the stars return. Why wouldn't they? The universe has never been particularly interested in surprising us. As part 11 begins to soften and thin, let your thoughts slow even more. The prairies fade into darkness. The deserts cool beneath starlight. The mountains hold their silhouettes quietly against the sky. You are not required to remember everything. You are allowed to let it drift. Above you now, the same sky remains, patient and wide. It has carried countless nights like this before, and it will carry countless more. The night has thinned into something almost transparent now. It feels less like darkness and more like a gentle space where nothing presses in, where everything simply exists. The sky above continues its quiet turning, unchanged by how much of the story has already been told. We drift onward again, slowly, as though floating rather than moving. In the rolling hills and valleys of central South America, long before empires formed, early agricultural communities learned to trust the rhythm of the sun. Without stone cities or towering monuments, they still noticed when the sun rose farther north, when shadows shortened, when the air warmed in a particular way. These subtle signals guided planting and rest. Time was read directly from the land and sky, without translation. Night after night, the same stars appeared. Not all were named. Not all needed stories. Their consistency was enough. The sky did not demand explanation. It offered reassurance simply by returning. As we move gently west again, toward the Pacific coast, ancient fishing communities along Peru and Ecuador timed their lives to both stars and tides. Lunar cycles mattered deeply here. The moon pulled the ocean, and the ocean fed the people. Watching the moon was not abstract observation. It was practical attention. When the moon was full, the water behaved differently. Nets were set differently. work shifted without complaint. The moonlight reflected on water, breaking into fragments that shimmered and vanished with each wave. Above, the same moon moves slowly, indifferent to how closely it was watched. Yet its influence reached everywhere. Further north, in the high plateaus of Colombia, the Muisca people developed a calendar system tied to lunar and solar cycles, guiding agriculture and ceremony. Gold objects shaped like suns and animals reflected celestial symbolism, catching firelight during rituals. Time was not hidden. It glowed softly, visible in art and action. The Muisca did not separate astronomy from ethics. Certain times were appropriate for generosity, others for restraint. Knowing the sky meant knowing how to live well within it. Balance mattered more than accuracy. As the night continues, our attention returns once more to stone and earth, to places where alignments still wait quietly. Many ancient sites across the Americas have never been fully studied. Some remain hidden beneath soil and forest. Others sit in plain sight, dismissed as natural formations. Yet each year, on a particular morning or evening, light touches them in exactly the same way it always has. The land remembers even when people forget. This realization brings a deep calm. There is no urgency to recover every detail, no pressure to catalogue every alignment. The sky does not mind being rediscovered slowly. It has been patient for millennia. Now, as Part 12 begins to dissolve into stillness, allow your awareness to soften almost completely. The images no longer need sharp edges. Let them blur gently, like stars seen through mist. The deserts, forests, mountains, and waters fade into a single quiet sense of space beneath the night sky. You have traveled far without moving at all. You have listened to stones, shadows, and stories that never hurried. And above it all, the sky continues its slow, faithful turning. The night now feels like a deep, familiar room, one you have been sitting in for so long that its edges no longer matter. The sky continues its slow movement above, steady and untroubled, and we drift onward again, almost without noticing that we are still moving at all. Across the high plains of central Argentina, ancient communities watched the southern sky with a calm attentiveness shaped by open horizons. Here, the stars rose and set without obstruction, tracing wide arcs that became familiar through repetition. The Southern Cross turned slowly through the night, its position used not only for direction, but for the gentle counting of hours. When it leaned one way, night was young. When it leaned another, dawn was already on its way. Fires burned low. Wind moved through tall grasses. The land felt vast, but never empty. The sky filled that space, offering structure without confinement. Time did not press forward. It unfolded. Far to the north again, in the lands surrounding the Great Lakes, indigenous nations watched reflections of stars shimmer on dark water. The lakes softened the sky, breaking light into trembling patterns that shifted with every movement of air. Even so, the cycles remained clear. The moon's phases guided fishing and travel. Ice formed and broke according to rhythms long understood. The stars overhead confirmed what the water already knew. Here, astronomy was deeply tied to patience. Winter demanded waiting. Spring arrived when it chose. The sky taught acceptance through repetition. Nothing could be rushed. Nothing needed to be. As the night deepens further, we return once more to the desert southwest, where the ancient Hohokam canals still lie faintly visible beneath modern cities. Though the structures are quiet now, the sky above them remains unchanged. The same solstice sun that once marked planting times still rises at the same point on the horizon. Shadows still fall the same way. The calendar still works, even when no one is watching. This is one of the most comforting truths hidden within ancient astronomy. These systems do not require constant maintenance. They are not fragile. They endure because they are aligned with something far larger than any single culture. When people leave, the sky stays. In the far south of the continent, beneath skies filled with unfamiliar constellations, the Yagan people of Tierra del Fuego watched stars from a land shaped by cold wind and water. Nights here could be harsh, yet the sky offered orientation and meaning. Certain stars marked seasonal shifts that affected seal hunting and travel. Stories softened the severity of the environment, turning observation into companionship. Looking up did not remove hardship, but it placed it within a larger pattern. The cold would return. The light would return. Everything moved, but nothing was random. As we drift gently toward the end of this part, the theme becomes unmistakably clear. Across the Americas, astronomy was not about mastery. It was about relationship. The sky was not conquered. It was trusted. People lived within its cycles, adjusting themselves rather than trying to adjust the heavens. There is deep rest in this perspective. Nothing needs to be forced. Nothing needs to be hurried. The universe does not ask for efficiency. It asks for attention, and even that only occasionally. Now, as part 13 begins to thin and fade, let your breathing slow to match the movement above. Stars glide. The earth turns. Somewhere, a solstice marker waits patiently for light that will arrive right on time. You do not need to stay awake for this to happen. It will happen whether you are watching or not. The night has grown very quiet now. Not silent, but settled. The kind of quiet where nothing feels unfinished. The sky continues its gentle motion, stars sliding slowly from one place to another, as if they have all the time in the world. We drift again, without effort, following that motion. Along the eastern woodlands of North America, long before written records, indigenous nations marked time through careful observation of trees, rivers, and the sky above them. The rising of certain stars coincided with the return of animals. The length of shadows told when corn should be planted. The moon's cycle shaped gatherings and rest. Everything was coordinated, yet nothing felt rigid. At night, smoke from small fires rose straight upward, dissolving into darkness. Above, the stars seemed close, softened by humidity and leaves. They were not sharp points of light, but gentle presences, familiar, dependable. When the same star appeared in the same place year after year, it brought reassurance rather than surprise. Far to the south again, in the vast Amazon basin, dense forest limited views of the horizon. Yet even here, astronomy flourished. Clearings opened just enough space for the sky to be read. The Milky Way was especially important, seen as a great river overhead, mirroring the rivers below. Its position signaled seasonal changes, flooding cycles, and times of abundance. The forest breathed, Insects hummed. The sky reflected itself in water and story. Knowledge moved through generations. Without needing stone markers or permanent structures, memory was carried by people, by ritual, by repetition. As the night continues to deepen, our attention drifts toward places where sound mattered as much as sight. In many indigenous cultures, chants and drums followed celestial rhythms. Ceremonies aligned not only with solstices or eclipses, but with the quiet feeling that a moment had arrived. The sky was felt, not just seen. A drumbeat echoed the steady pulse of time. Not seconds or minutes, but something slower, something closer to the turning of the earth itself. Listening became another way of observing the heavens. In parts of the Caribbean, island communities watched the stars rise directly from the sea. The horizon was clean and precise. Certain stars marked the safest seasons for travel by canoe. Navigation depended on memory and trust. The sky became a map that never faded. Salt air cooled the skin. Waves whispered against the shore. Above, stars traced paths that were memorized rather than measured. Each journey was both physical and celestial, guided by light that had traveled for years just to arrive. As this part gently approaches its end, everything begins to soften again. The details blur slightly, like a landscape scene while drifting into sleep. What remains is not information, but atmosphere, a sense of continuity, a feeling that time itself has slowed to a kind pace. Ancient American astronomy was never separated from life. It was woven into it quietly, patiently, without urgency. The sky did not demand attention. It offered guidance when needed and silence when not. Now, let that same quiet guide you. The stars will continue moving whether you are listening or dreaming. The calendars carved into stone and memory will keep counting, without numbers, without words. You can rest now, knowing that nothing is out of place. The night feels almost weightless now, as if it no longer presses down at all. It simply surrounds. The sky stretches wide and patient, its slow movement barely noticeable unless you allow yourself to notice it. We drift again, quietly, without urgency, following the same ancient rhythm that guided so many before us. In the wide river valleys of what is now the southeastern United States, Mississippian communities once gathered beneath moonlit skies. Earthen mounds rose gently from the ground, shaped carefully by hands that understood proportion and alignment. These mounds were not hurried creations. Basket by basket, layer by layer, they emerged oriented toward the paths of the sun and moon. At Cahokia, the great wooden circle sometimes called a sun calendar stood silently on the plain. Tall posts marked where the sun rose on solstices and equinoxes. When light touched a particular post, people knew it was time to plant, to gather, to prepare. The knowledge was visible, shared, and calm. No one needed to ask the sky what time it was. The answer was already waiting. As dawn approached on those marked days, mist often hung low over the fields. The wooden posts stood dark against the pale sky. Birds stirred. The sun rose exactly where it always had. There was comfort in that certainty. Even as generations passed, the horizon did not shift. Farther south, in Mesoamerica, long stone stairways climbed toward temples built with extraordinary precision. the Maya, whose attention to celestial cycles was unmatched, recorded movements of the sun, moon, and planets with remarkable care. The Dresden Codex preserved tables of Venus cycles, predicting its appearances with quiet accuracy. Venus was not merely a planet. It was a presence tied to cycles of conflict, renewal, and ceremony. Yet even here, amid such complex calculation, the tone was not frantic. Observations unfolded slowly over centuries. Adjustments were made gently. Knowledge accumulated. Like sediment, layer upon layer, never rushed. At Chichen Itza, shadows still move across stone in the same way they once did. On certain days, light creates the illusion of a serpent descending the staircase. The effect is subtle. It does not shout. It reveals itself only to those who are patient enough to watch. The stone remains cool. The air holds its breath. Then the moment pauses. As the night deepens further, we move again toward the Andean heights. High above the valleys, the Inca observed the sky with clarity born of thin air and wide horizons. The Milky Way was not distant. It felt close enough to touch. Dark cloud constellations form shapes within its glow, animals emerging from absence rather than light. The Inca ceque system radiated outward from Cusco, linking sacred sites with celestial events. Time and space were braided together. Rituals aligned with solstices, agricultural cycles, and the behavior of stars. Everything moved together, slowly, deliberately. Cold stone beneath bare feet, breath visible in the air. The sun rising between mountain peaks exactly as expected. There was no surprise, only confirmation. As this part gently settles toward its end, the sense of continuity becomes even stronger. Across continents and centuries, the same sky was read in different ways, yet always with respect. The heavens were not abstract. They were present. They were close. Now, allow the images to soften once more. Let the mounds, temples, mountains, and rivers fade into a shared quiet. The sky remains, turning slowly, unconcerned with endings or beginnings. You have followed these ancient calendars far enough for tonight. They will continue without you. They always do. The night now feels almost tender, as though it has wrapped the world in a soft, steady blanket. Each star continues its slow, eternal passage, and we drift with them, neither hurried nor seeking. The darkness carries a sense of calm that touches both body and thought. In the high deserts of northern Mexico, the ancient sites of Paquin lie silent under moonlight. Adobe walls, carefully aligned, once framed celestial events that guided daily life and ritual. Doorways oriented toward rising and setting points of the sun served as markers for solstices and seasonal changes. Light and shadow moved predictably through these spaces, teaching lessons quietly, without urgency. Generations of observers knew the sky intimately. Each sunrise confirmed understanding. Each sunset offered reflection. Wind brushes across the desert now, stirring loose sand. Fires that once illuminated ceremonies flicker only in imagination. The stars do not need applause. They shine regardless. Observation is reward enough. Far to the north, in the boreal forests, Athabascan communities watched subtle changes in light reflected on snow and ice. The moon's path informed travel across frozen rivers. Aurora colored the sky like soft brushstrokes. But these were not distractions, they were guides, warnings, and beauty entwined. To track time here required both attention and patience, blending movement on land with movement above. The night air smells faintly of pine and earth. Footsteps are soft, shadows lengthen imperceptibly. The sky continues its steady turning, indifferent yet generous. In the Caribbean, island cultures observed stars rising directly from the water. Canoes glided silently on calm seas, guided by positions memorized and passed down. Navigation was more than travel, it was a practice of listening, waiting, and noticing. The horizon became a calendar, the waves a measure of time, and the stars overhead a silent companion. Even minor errors mattered. Even subtle shifts demanded awareness. Yet this was never frantic. The rhythm was slow, steady, and soothing. Across the Andes, the Inca solar observatories, such as Intihuatana stones, cast long shadows that measured the passage of the sun with remarkable precision. At solstice, sunlight falls across carved surfaces, tracing lines designed centuries before. These instruments are not complicated by modern standards, but their accuracy is uncanny. The light moves predictably. Observers watched patiently. Life aligned itself with what the sky promised. As the night deepens further, we drift once more into the Amazon, where dense canopy hides most of the stars. Here, light emerges only in small patches. Even so, communities learn to read subtle cues, reflections in water, gaps in leaves, the appearance of fireflies as markers of celestial cycles. Knowledge flows gently through oral traditions. Observation is embedded in story, song, and ritual, carried from one generation to the next with care and attention. Across all these cultures, one pattern emerges clearly. Astronomy is not about domination. It is about relationship. Time is not abstract. It is tangible, lived, and shared. Observing the sky was not a task to finish, but a state of being. The rhythm of stars and sun shaped every action, every breath, every plan. As part 16 begins to soften into stillness, allow your awareness to drift even further. Let the deserts, forests, mountains, rivers, and oceans melt together beneath the slow turning of the night sky. Let your breath match the patient rhythm above. You do not need to remember every alignment, every observation, every sight. The sky remembers for you. Above you, the stars continue their eternal passage. They do not hurry. They do not falter. They simply are. The night now feels almost sacred in its stillness. Each star hovers quietly, timeless and patient, as though it has always known how to wait. We drift with them once again, weightless, following the slow, steady rhythm that countless generations have followed before. In the river valleys of the southeastern United States, where the gentle swell of water softens the land, the Mississippian peoples once observed the heavens to mark cycles of planting, harvesting, and ceremony. Mounds, carefully oriented, caught sunlight at precise points during solstices. Shadows stretched long across earthen terraces, highlighting subtle features that instructed communities when to gather, when to rest, and when to prepare. Observation was a form of intimacy with the world, requiring patience rather than haste. Night air carries the scent of damp earth and leaf litter. Crickets hum in unison, creating a rhythm that mirrors the slow turning of the sky. The stars themselves are almost imperceptible in their motion, yet each one holds information passed down across generations through oral traditions, memory, and ritual. Far to the west, in the deserts of Sonora and Chihuahua, the Hohokam built canals aligned with the sun's movement, allowing agricultural life to follow the rhythm of the heavens. Stone markers, subtle yet deliberate, indicated when the solstice sun would rise, guiding the planting of maize and beans. These alignments required careful attention and a gentle awareness of light, shadow, and terrain, creating a calendar that was as much a lived experience as it was a measure of time. Wind drifts across canyon walls. Fires glow faintly in memory. The Milky Way arches overhead, spilling pale light across stones, sand, and soil. It has always been here. It has always moved in the same measured rhythm. The Earth responds in its own way. In Mesoamerica, among the Maya, the careful recording of Venus' cycle in the Dresden Codex is not just technical precision. It is poetry in numbers. Venus, rising as the morning star, signals times of war, ritual, and renewal. The planet's appearance is not just observation. It is a gentle guide for human action, marking opportunities and limitations with serene consistency. At sites like Chichen Itza and Uxmal, shadow and light play across pyramids in exact ways during solstices and equinoxes. The pyramid itself becomes a measuring device. Light touches edges with precision. Shadows stretch and shift. The moment is fleeting, but it recurs predictably year after year. Patience is rewarded. The sky confirms what is expected as the night deepens further in the high Andes. The ceque system of Cusco radiates outward from the city, linking sacred huacas with solar, lunar, and stellar cycles. Observers walked these paths carefully, noting the sun's position on mountaintops, tracking the Milky Way and dark constellations. Life, ceremony, and agriculture moved in harmony with the heavens. Even absence was meaningful. The dark spaces between stars became guides themselves, pointing to times for planting, gathering, and reflection. From north to south, from desert to jungle, one truth becomes clear. Ancient American astronomy was about attention, continuity, and relationship. Observers did not dominate the sky. They aligned with it. They moved with it. They rested in its rhythm. Knowledge was accumulated not through urgency, but through repeated observation, patient waiting, and careful memory. As part 17 begins to dissolve into quiet, allow yourself to feel the vastness of the night around you. The deserts cool. The rivers flow silently. The mountains hold their patient shapes. And above, the stars glide slowly, endlessly, without expectation. You do not need to keep track of time anymore. The sky remembers. You can rest. The night now feels like a gentle exhale, a release of tension as the world and the sky continue their slow, unbroken movement. Stars drift overhead, steady and patient, carrying the weight of countless generations who have watched them with care. We drift alongside, weightless, following the same eternal rhythm. In the valleys and lowlands of Colombia, the Muisca people observed lunar and solar cycles with remarkable sensitivity. Their rituals, calendars, and gold artifacts reflected not only celestial precision, but a worldview grounded in harmony. Observing the heavens was a way of listening to time itself. Gold discs glimmered faintly in ceremonial spaces, catching morning light in alignment with the rising sun. The objects were not decoration, they were markers, instruments, guides. Life unfolded within these rhythms, quietly, predictably, calmly. Night is cool here. Mist rises from the rivers. The sky is a soft wash of deep blue, stars scattered like distant whispers. The patterns above are subtle, yet consistent, encouraging attentiveness without urgency. Far to the west, in the deserts of northern Chile, the ancient peoples of the Atacama aligned ceremonial stones to track solstices and star risings. Even with minimal material resources, their observations were exact. The sun rose over markers with the same precision each year. Shadows shifted as intended. These alignments were guides to planting, gathering, and ritual, embedded within lived experience rather than written record. Each year repeated itself, confirming lessons already learned. As we drift eastward across the Amazon basin, the sky becomes harder to see. Dense canopy hides the stars, yet the people here adapted. Reflections in rivers, openings in leaves, and changes in animal behavior served as indicators of celestial timing. Observation was not limited to sight. It included memory, sound, movement, and story. Life was aligned to cycles, whether visible or hidden. In the Andes, the Inca ceque system radiated outward from Cusco, linking sacred sites to astronomical events. Huacas, the sacred shrines, marked the passage of solstices and equinoxes. Walkers would follow these paths deliberately, observing light and shadow at each marker. The Milky Way and the dark constellations above were guides in themselves, revealing times for ritual, agriculture, and reflection. Observation became a way of inhabiting both space and time. Across the hemisphere, from deserts to jungles, from plains to mountains, a common pattern emerges. The sky was never conquered. It was listened to, trusted, and interpreted. Knowledge accumulated slowly, gently, over generations. Time was not forced. It was observed, respected, and integrated into life itself. There is a soft humor here, too, without telescopes, computers, or alarms. These cultures tracked cycles more accurately than we often track our own modern devices. Solstices, planetary appearances, and eclipses were known with certainty. They did not need reminders. They only needed attention. As part 18 begins to fade, allow your breathing to slow further. The forests, deserts, mountains, and rivers blur gently into a single sense of quiet. The stars glide above, patient and unhurried. You do not need to follow them closely. They will continue regardless. The sky remains steady. You can rest. The night now feels like it is breathing along with you, slow and steady. The stars above move with infinite patience, tracing paths that have been followed for millennia. We drift alongside them, suspended in quiet, letting the world soften around us. In the high plateaus of Peru and Bolivia, the Chavan culture observed celestial cycles and integrated them into the design of temples. Underground passageways captured light at specific times of year. marking solstices and equinoxes. Shadows and echoes guided ceremony and reflection, connecting the earthly with the cosmic. Light became sound, movement became knowledge, and observation became devotion. Everything was intentional, gentle, and patient. The night air is cold here, carrying scents of stone, soil, and distant vegetation. The stars are clear, almost close enough to touch, and the Milky Way stretches like a river of light across the sky. Each turn of the heavens is predictable, yet infinitely beautiful. Far north, in the forests and rivers of the Great Lakes region, the Anishinaabe and other nations observed the reflection of stars on still waters. Seasonal changes, the migration of animals, and the timing of ceremonies were all linked to celestial patterns. The sky, water, and land worked together to guide life without hurry. The night was not something to be conquered. It was a companion. Across the deserts of the southwest, the ancestral Puebloans of Choco Canyon aligned their buildings with solar and lunar cycles. Sunlight enters kivas, sacred underground chambers, at precise angles on solstice days. Light reveals hidden knowledge in these spaces. The architecture itself becomes a calendar, a slow-moving instrument, tracing time with shadows and warmth. Life flowed according to these rhythms, in sync with the cosmos. In Mesoamerica, the Maya used their knowledge of Venus, the sun, and moon to orchestrate ceremonies that aligned with both observation and narrative. Planetary cycles were embedded in stories, passed down orally and visually through codices. Children grew up learning to observe the heavens, to see patterns, and to internalize cosmic cycles as a natural part of life. Even in the dense jungles of the Amazon, where stars are hidden most nights, indigenous peoples noticed subtle cues, reflections in rivers, shifts in animal behavior, changes in humidity, that echoed celestial timing. Astronomy was not confined to sight alone. It was felt, lived, and remembered. Stories carried the calendar across generations, ensuring continuity without stone markers or written records. The humor here is quiet, almost imperceptible, without tools or technology. These peoples knew the sky's rhythms with accuracy that we still marvel at today. Observing the heavens was natural, essential, and intimate, a quiet mastery that required only attention and patience. As part 19 begins to soften, let your own awareness slow further. Mountains, rivers, deserts, forests all fade into shadow. The stars move steadily above, unconcerned and serene. You do not need to remember every alignment or observation. The sky keeps counting. Breathe slowly. Let the night carry you. You are part of this rhythm now, if only in quiet. Attention. The sky is patient, and you are allowed to rest. The night has grown softer now, like a whispered lullaby that drifts over desert sands, mountain peaks, and forest canopies alike. The sky above continues its slow, patient turning, indifferent to human urgency, yet perfectly aligned with the quiet rhythm of life below. We drift alongside, weightless, letting the calm settle deeper into every breath. In the great river valleys of central Mexico, long before towering temples captured the eye, early Mesoamerican communities observed the heavens with careful attention. The rising and setting of the sun, moon, and planets shaped the cycles of planting, harvesting, and ceremony. Observers did not need clocks or instruments. They measured time with shadows, light, and memory. Every dawn and dusk offered instruction. Every nightfall reaffirmed understanding. The air carries the scent of earth, dust, and faint smoke from imagined ceremonial fires. Shadows lengthen softly. The stars trace arcs overhead, unhurried and deliberate. The Milky Way spills across the sky, a pale ribbon that has been traveling its course for millennia, indifferent yet comforting. Far south, across the high Andes, the Inca and their predecessors aligned shrines, terraces, and stone pathways to track solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant stars. The ceque system radiated outward from Cusco, connecting sacred sites in a lattice of observation, ritual, and daily life. Observers walked these paths slowly, noting light, shadow, and alignment. The Milky Way's dark cloud constellations guided agricultural and ceremonial decisions, weaving the sky seamlessly into earthly life. Night in these highlands is cold, and breath rises in small clouds. Stones are smooth under bare feet. Fires glow faintly in memory. The sun rises between peaks exactly as it has for centuries. Life is quiet, deliberate, aligned. Far to the north, in the boreal forests and riverlands of the Great Lakes region, indigenous communities observed reflections of stars in still waters, the Pleiades, Orion, and other constellations, signaled migration, planting, and hunting times. Observation was patient and integrated. There was no rush. Time was not forced. It flowed naturally with the cycles of stars, river, and animal. Even in dense tropical forests, where stars are mostly hidden, observation continued. Gaps in the canopy, reflections in water, animal behavior, and the shifting moon guided knowledge of the seasons. Astronomy was woven into life as story, song, and ritual. Knowledge was shared carefully, generation to generation, and repeated enough times to become instinct. Across the Americas, a single truth emerges. The sky was not conquered. It was observed, respected, and integrated. Knowledge accumulated slowly, without hurry. Without stress, observers moved with the heavens rather than against them. They rested under the stars, and the stars continued their eternal, calm rhythm. As Part 20 drifts to its gentle close, allow your own awareness to soften completely. Mountains, rivers, deserts, and forests fade gently into shadow. The stars glide overhead, indifferent, patient, enduring. You do not need to track their every movement. You are allowed to rest. Breathe slowly. Let the night carry you. You are part of this rhythm now, if only in quiet attention. The night now feels vast and unhurried, like a quiet ocean of darkness stretching beyond sight, with stars slowly drifting as if they are aware of nothing but their own patient rhythm. We continue to drift gently with them, weightless, suspended in the calm that comes from long observation and quiet attention. In the deserts of northern Mexico and the American Southwest, the Raramuri, or Tarahumara, observed the subtle movements of stars across high plateaus. There, long-distance running mirrored the movement of the heavens, steady, unhurried, in rhythm with the cycles of day and night. Each stride, each breath, was attuned to time measured by the sun and moon. Nothing was rushed. Everything unfolded at its own pace, in harmony with the sky. The desert night carries the scent of cold stone, dry sand, and distant vegetation. The Milky Way stretches above, faintly luminous, spilling pale silver light across plateaus and canyons. Shadows lengthen imperceptibly. The stars move slowly, precisely, unconcerned with human measurement, yet offering perfect consistency to those who pay attention. Far to the east, among the rolling hills and forests of the southeast, the Mississippian peoples watched celestial events and integrated them into the alignment of mounds, plazas, and ceremonial spaces. Light and shadow marked solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles. Observers could tell the season by the movement of light across these carefully constructed sites. Knowledge was embedded in action, ritual, and observation. Time was measured not in clocks, but in experience. In Mesoamerica, the Maya continued to record movements of Venus, the Sun, and the Moon, mapping celestial patterns with exacting care. Venus' appearance as morning or evening star signaled ceremonial, agricultural, and even military events. These observations were passed down through generations with both precision and poetry. Life was lived in alignment with the sky, not separated from it. High in the Andes, the Inca ceque system radiated from Cusco, linking sacred sites to celestial events. Observers walked these paths deliberately, noting shadow, light, and alignment. The Milky Way's dark cloud constellations became a guide, and the movements of stars and planets were interpreted within agricultural and ceremonial cycles. Life flowed slowly and deliberately in response to observation, not compulsion. Across all of these, landscapes, deserts, forests, river valleys, high plateaus, and islands, the same pattern emerges. Astronomy was never about domination. It was about attention, patience, and integration. Observers learned to move with the sky, not against it. Knowledge was accumulated over generations. Time was not pressured. It was respected, mirrored in the cycles of land, water, and story. The quiet humor of this is subtle. Without telescopes, computers, or digital reminders, ancient peoples often tracked cosmic cycles more accurately than we track our modern devices. Observation was natural, practical, and integrated with daily life. As Part 21 begins to dissolve, allow your own awareness to soften further. Let the rivers, mountains, deserts, and forests fade into shadow. Let the stars continue their patient journey overhead. You do not need to follow every movement. The sky will continue regardless. Breathe slowly. Let yourself rest in the rhythm of the night, aligned with the calm and enduring turn of the heavens. The night now feels like a soft, endless expanse, stretching quietly in every direction. Stars drift slowly overhead, each following its own patient path, and we drift with them, weightless, calm, suspended in the timeless rhythm that has guided generations before us. In the river valleys of the southeastern United States, Mississippian peoples aligned mounds and ceremonial spaces with the movement of the sun and moon. Shadows stretched across the earth at solstices and equinoxes, marking the cycles of planting and harvesting. Observation was steady, quiet, a gentle engagement with the world. The rhythm of life was synchronized with the sky, creating a calm, ordered passage of time. The night air carries the scent of damp earth and leaves. Crickets hum softly, shadows shift imperceptibly. Above, the stars glide across the sky in slow, predictable arcs, offering guidance without demand. They have been moving this way for millennia, and they will continue to do so long after any one observer is gone. Far west, in the deserts of Sonora and Chihuahua, the Hohokam lined canals and stone markers to follow the sun's path. Light falling through doorways marked solstices. Shadows indicated the changing season. Life, work, and ritual moved in harmony with these rhythms. Each year repeated itself, a quiet, patient cycle that required only attention and care to follow. In Mesoamerica, the Maya tracked Venus and lunar cycles with remarkable precision. The Dresden Codex records these observations in tables and illustrations, detailing cycles that influenced ritual, agricultural activity, and social organization. Venus rising and setting were tied to sacred events, showing a deep understanding of celestial timing. Observation was continuous, calm, and meditative, not frantic or hurried. High in the Andes, Inca observers walked the ceque paths radiating from Cusco. Huacas, sacred shrines, marked solstices and equinoxes. The Milky Way's dark cloud constellations guided decisions about planting, ceremony, and communal life. Observation was embodied, lived, and deeply respectful. Life and the sky moved together, slowly and deliberately. Even in the dense forests of the Amazon, where stars are largely hidden, people read the sky through indirect cues, gaps in the canopy, reflections in water, shifts in animal behavior. Astronomy became integrated with story, song, and ritual. Knowledge was preserved through repeated practice, observation, and oral memory. It was quiet, patient, reliable. Across all these landscapes, one truth emerges. The sky was not conquered. It was attended to, respected, and internalized. Time was not forced. Knowledge accumulated slowly and carefully over generations. Life moved in harmony with celestial rhythm, not in opposition to it. There is gentle humor in this patience. Without clocks, telescopes, or screens, ancient peoples often tracked time and cosmic events more accurately than we track our modern devices. They observed, waited, and aligned themselves with the sky naturally, gracefully, intimately. As Part 20 comes to a gentle close, allow your awareness to soften completely. Let mountains, rivers, deserts, and forests blur together beneath the night sky. Let the stars glide overhead, patient and unhurried. You do not need to follow every movement. The sky will continue, steady and enduring. Breathe slowly. Allow yourself to sink fully into the calm rhythm of the heavens. The night now feels like a soft, steady tide, flowing endlessly without demand or interruption. Each star drifts across the sky in perfect patience, tracing arcs that have guided countless generations. We drift with them, weightless, quiet, attuned to their calm and timeless rhythm. Far to the northern plains, the Lakota and Dakota peoples observed the rising and setting of stars to mark seasonal cycles. The Pleiades' early morning rise in late spring signaled the time for planting and preparation. Orion's ascent guided hunting and ceremonial events. Observation was intimate and patient, embedded in daily life rather than written in instruments or books. Time was measured through attention, not urgency. The prairie night carries the scent of dry grass, faint river moisture, and distant pine. Shadows shift slowly, almost imperceptibly. The stars move steadily above, unhurried yet reliable, teaching patience simply by existing. The Milky Way arcs, like a pale ribbon, soft against the dark sky, constant and reassuring. Far south, in northern Mexico and the American Southwest, the Raramuri, or Tarahumara, aligned movement and ceremony with the sky. Long-distance running, ritual, and daily work mirrored the cycles of the heavens. Each step, each breath, was synchronized with solar and lunar motion. Life was steady, flowing, without rush. Observation was lived and embodied. In Mesoamerica, the Maya tracked Venus, the sun, and moon, often recording their knowledge in the Dresden Codex. Venus appearances as morning or evening star marked times of ceremony, agriculture, and even warfare. These were not hurried observations. They were patient, deliberate, meditative, and deeply interwoven with culture. The celestial cycles guided life with quiet authority. High in the Andes, the Inca ceque system radiated outward from Cusco, connecting sacred huacas with solstices, equinoxes, and stellar alignments. Observers walked these paths, noting light and shadow, observing the Milky Way and dark cloud constellations. Their movement through the landscape mirrored the sky above, creating harmony between Earth, life, and cosmos. Even in the dense Amazon rainforest, where stars were often hidden, observation continued. Reflection in water, openings in the canopy, the behavior of animals, and the moon's faint light allowed people to track time and seasonal change. Astronomy was deeply embodied, woven into story, song, ritual, and daily life. Knowledge passed naturally from one generation to the next through attention and memory. Across the Americas, a pattern emerges. Astronomy was not about dominance. It was about relationship. Life moved with the sky, and the sky moved predictably, requiring patience, attention, and reverence. Knowledge accumulated slowly and gently across generations. Life was measured, not forced. There is quiet humor in this. Without telescopes, alarms, or modern technology, ancient peoples observed cosmic cycles with remarkable accuracy. Solstices, planetary movements, and eclipses were reliably tracked. Observation was natural, practical, and meditative. As Part 23 softens, allow your mind to drift fully into stillness. Mountains, rivers, forests, deserts, let them fade gently into shadow. The stars move above, patient and steady. You do not need to follow every detail. The sky continues regardless. Breathe slowly. Sink fully into the calm rhythm of the heavens. The night stretches quietly, calm and unhurried, as stars drift with steady patience above the earth. Across the Americas, ancient peoples watched these movements not to control them, but to live in harmony with them. In Chaco Canyon, stone and shadow-marked solstices. In the Andes, the Milky Way and dark constellations guided ritual and agriculture. Among the Maya, Venus, the moon, and the sun were tracked with gentle precision, their cycles preserved through memory, story, and careful observation. Everywhere, attention replaced instruments, and time was understood through rhythm rather than urgency. Across deserts, plains, forests, and mountains, astronomy was woven into daily life. Even where stars were hidden, people observed through water, animals, and subtle changes in light. Knowledge grew slowly, passed from generation to generation, patient and enduring. As this moment settles, there is nothing to follow or measure. The sky continues its quiet turning. Breathe slowly, rest deeply, and let yourself drift with the calm, timeless rhythm of the heavens. The night feels soft and endless, a quiet expanse where stars drift slowly and without urgency. Across the Americas, ancient peoples observed this steady movement with patience and care. In Chaco Canyon, stone and shadow marked solstices. In the Andes, the Inca followed the Milky Way and its dark constellations. The Maya tracked Venus, the sun, and the moon with remarkable precision, while the Lakota and Dakota read seasonal change in the rising of the Pleiades and Orion. Even in dense forests, observation continued through reflections, animals, and subtle shifts in light. Everywhere, the sky was not controlled, but respected and lived with. Knowledge grew slowly, passed through memory, ritual, and daily practice. Without clocks or instruments, time was measured through attention and relationship with the land. As this moment settles, landscapes soften into shadow beneath the calm turning of the heavens. You do not need to watch or follow. Breathe slowly. Let the steady rhythm of the stars carry you gently into stillness. The night feels soft and endless, a quiet expanse where stars drift slowly overhead. Across the Americas, ancient peoples lived within this rhythm, watching patiently as light, shadow, and seasons returned again and again. In Chaco Canyon, stone and sunlight marked solstices. In the Andes, mountains and the Milky Way guided agriculture and ceremony. The Maya followed Venus, the sun, and the moon with careful attention, while peoples of the plains read planting and hunting seasons in the rising of familiar stars. Even where the sky was hidden by forest, observation continued through water, animals, and subtle changes in light. These were not attempts to control the heavens, but relationships with them. Time was felt in soil, breath, and memory, not measured by clocks. Knowledge grew slowly, passed through story and ritual, steady and calm. Without haste or urgency, the sky was trusted to return to the same places, night after night. Now, as this journey settles into stillness, there is nothing left to follow. Mountains, rivers, and deserts fade into shadow beneath the gentle turning of the stars. Breathe slowly. Let your thoughts drift. The cosmos continues, patient and eternal, and the night holds you quietly as you rest.
As we stand in the present moment, the river of time keeps flowing forward. What lies ahead is not written in stone, but in the choice we make today. History has shown us that every ending is a new beginning. Every fall is followed by a rise. Let us look ahead with hope and wisdom to what the future might hold. The age of unity. In the coming years, the world may become even more connected. Borders between nations will feel less important. People from different lands will work together on big dreams, healing the earth, exploring space, and solving problems like hunger and sickness. Imagine a world where every child has a school, every family has clean water, and every person has a voice. This is not just a dream, it is a possibility. History has taught us that when human unity, great things happen. From the first fire to the first spaceship, progress comes from sharing knowledge and helping one another. The stars are calling once again after the moon. Human will reach Mars